In the midst of a dense forest, a young girl frantically dashes away from two hillbillies, who are hot on her heels. Unfortunately, she is eventually caught and rendered unconscious by having a sack placed over her head. Upon regaining consciousness, she finds herself bound and trapped in a remote cabin's fruit cellar. An elderly woman is reciting mystical chants from a peculiar book, while the young girl implores her father, Harold, to release her from her predicament. However, Harold remains obstinate and refuses to comply with her requests. Eventually, the girl confesses to being possessed by a demonic entity and threatens to harm him. In response, Harold decides to set her on fire and shoot her, ending her demonic possession once and for all. In 2011, David Allen and his girlfriend, Natalie, make their way to a cabin in the wood, accompanied by their dog, Grandpa. They intend to spend time there with David's younger sister, Mia, who he has been estranged from. Along with them are their friends Eric, a high school teacher, and Olivia, a nurse. The group hopes that Mia will be able to overcome her heroin addiction while they stay at the cabin. However, things quickly take a turn for the worse when Mia begins experiencing severe withdrawal symptoms and repeatedly complains of a putrid odor that the others disregard. It is not until David investigates the cabin's cellar that they begin to understand why Mia is feeling this way. The cellar is littered with the remains of decaying animals, an old double-barrel shotgun, and a book named The Naturum de Monto. During their stay at the cabin, Eric's curiosity gets the best of him, and he decides to recite an incantation from the mysterious book. Unbeknownst to him, this act unleashes a malicious force that begins to torment the group. Mia, in particular, starts seeing a demonic figure resembling herself in the nearby woods, and grows increasingly fearful. Despite her pleas to leave, the rest of the group dismisses her visions as mere delusions. However, things take a turn for the worse when Mia steals Eric's car and crashes it into a nearby pond while being chased by the malevolent force. The entity then pursues her into the wood, where she becomes ensnared in a thicket of vines that emerge from a tree. Mia's doppelganger soon appears and disgorges a sentient vine that enters Mia's body, effectively possessing her. Upon his return to the cabin, David discovers Grandpa, their beloved dog, has been savagely beaten to death with a hammer. Desperate for answers, David confronts Mia, who is in the shower, and finds her scalding herself. He realizes that her possession has taken a dangerous turn, and decides to take her to a hospital. Unfortunately, a sudden downpour causes the road to be washed out, leaving them stranded. That night, the possessed Mia proceeds to attack her brother with a shotgun, proclaiming that they will all perish, before vomiting an ominous red substance onto Olivia's face. Eric manages to lock Mia in the basement, but Olivia later succumbs to possession. Eric discovers her in the shower, in the midst of mutilating her face, and she stabs him repeatedly with a hypodermic needle before he kills her in self-defense. Mia then lures Natalie into the cellar, where she bites her hand and slices her tongue apart with a box cutter before forcibly kissing her. David intervenes and helps Natalie escape, subsequently locking Mia back in the basement. Eric reveals that according to the Naturum de Monto, the Taker of Souls must claim 5 victims before unleashing the abomination. Soon after, Natalie's arm becomes possessed, forcing her to sever it with an electric knife. Eric explains that Mia can only be purified through live burial, dismemberment, or burning. The possessed Natalie then launches an attack on David and Eric with a nail gun, but David manages to shoot off her other arm. Although the amputation appears to restore Natalie's sanity, she ultimately dies from her injuries. David decides to douse the cabin with gasoline, but Mia's nostalgic singing causes him to change his mind and bury her instead. While attempting to retrieve her from the cellar, Mia tries to drown David. Eric intervenes, but he is fatally stabbed. David sedates and buries Mia, but after hearing her heartbeat stop, he digs her up and uses a homemade defibrillator to revive her. After several attempts, David believes Mia has finally found peace and covers her with dirt. As he returns to the cabin, he hears a mysterious voice and discovers that Mia is alive. David then goes into the cabin to retrieve his car keys, but is stabbed by Eric's possessed corpse. In an effort to protect Mia, David locks her out before igniting a gasoline can, which kills him and Eric in the resulting explosion. With David's death being the fifth soul claimed, blood begins to rain from the sky, and Mia is attacked by the abomination in the form of her demonic doppelganger. Mia finds a chainsaw and manages to sever the abomination's legs, but it retaliates by flipping David's Jeep onto her left arm, trapping her. Fueled by desperation, Mia frees herself by amputating her left hand, takes up the chainsaw, and bisects the abomination's head, causing it to sink back into the ground and the rain to stop. An exhausted Mia leaves to search for help, not realizing that the Naturum de Monto is still intact and slamming shut on its own.